Earlier this spring, my Aunt May, or technically my Great Aunt Mae, she visited me this spring. And I don't mean that she like booked a plane flight in and drove and came and stayed at my house. No, she's deceased. This was a mediumship event. So my Great Aunt May showed up energetically one morning as I was out on my patio meditating. I literally had that feeling of like swoop, swoop, swoop. And there was the face of my Great Aunt May, and I could energetically feel her there with me. And it really brought me kind of up short and brought tears to my eyes because, like, Great Aunt May really did not play large in my life. Like, out of all the chess piece players of family on my mom's side of my family and my dad's side of my family, all Hoosier, all Indiana, all Indiana roots, while our little family got away and, lived in Colorado. Like, I was born and raised in Colorado, but I had Hoosier roots. And so Indiana Hoosier roots and Indiana relatives and family played large in my life. But out of all the chess pieces and big chess players of like my family on both sides of my family, Great Aunt May, she was like more on the periphery. And she didn't live in Indiana. She and her husband, Uncle Pat, they lived in central Illinois. But what's really interesting is, like, me and my family, my biological family, we would travel from Colorado back to Indiana. I mean, literally back home again in Indiana, that Hoagie Carmichael song, like that is like, that got drenched through my body when I was a little girl, like back home again in Indiana. Like, it really was like that, getting in the car, leaving Colorado, driving out through Sterling, Colorado, across, the Nebraska plains into the rolling hills of Iowa, and then the heavy thickness of Illinois would hit, and then Indiana. I mean, it really was back home again in Indiana. And when we would go back to Indiana, it was like, all the cousins and aunts and uncles and grandparents, central Indiana, northern Indiana, southern Indiana. I mean, the whole thing, right? And then on the periphery was Great Aunt May and Great Uncle Pat. Of course, we didn't call them the Greats. It was just Aunt May, Uncle Pat. And we would not see them every trip, but, they would satellite in and out. Sometimes they'd come in from Illinois and visit in Indiana while we were there, or we would travel into Illinois and visit them there. And, for a very long time, like, especially as I was growing up, Aunt May and Uncle Pat, they were like the quirky aunt and uncle, because they never had kids. Aunt May couldn't have kids. And, for that generation, not having children, that was a huge stigma that Aunt May and Uncle Pat had to live through. And then Uncle Pat, like, and you got to know Uncle Pat, he was like a leprechaun to me. Like, every time I met him, like, he was a short, joyful, smoking a cigar, happy-go-lucky, funny kind of guy. Always jovial and joking. And to me, he was like he was like an elemental. He was like a leprechaun. And Aunt May stood a full head taller than him, and she was all business. She was literally the pants in the family, and he was the happy-go-lucky guy, right? And they kind of satellited in and out of my life, not as major players. But then later on, after, like, Uncle Pat died pretty early, and Aunt May then continued to live a strong, long, full life after that. I mean, decades. She was the spinster. So she and Uncle Pat, like, not having kids and the stigma with that, and then she went to being, but literally I heard her called the spinster, the funny, crazy spinster. Like, that whole stigma happened with her, but she didn't take any mind to that. She just motored on and powered on, and she was not wealthy. They did not have a lot of money. I think she was still living in the same family house that she grew up in. At least that's what I seem to pick up on. I mean, and the stories about this house got built, during the Depression. And so some of the walls were made up of discarded railroad car doors. The story goes that when they were building that house, they put the railroad car doors in the wall to help with the stability of the house. Like that's how crazy that time was. Oh, and they lived just down the road from the shirt factory, and so they would make clothes out of the remnants from the shirt factory and then make quilts. And those were the quilts that Aunt May made. Like later on in life, when we would go visit her, she was like always working on a couple quilts at the same time, either piecing them or putting the texture in them, the needle in and out and in and out. And she was also great at weaving. She weaved cloths and rugs and blankets. She was a weaver, and she was a doll maker. And so, and I know I'm kind of swirling in memories right now, but Aunt May didn't have a lot of money. I'm pretty sure she was on Social Security, SSI. But then she also augmented her income by this industriousness of, she made quilts and sold them, and made dolls and sold them. She made these rugs, woven rugs kind of thing, and she sold those. And so she was always industrious and augmenting her income and taking care of herself. She was very self-sustainable, very self-resilient. There was a feeling that I got off of her of like, don't you feel sorry for me. I'm just fine. I can take care of myself. I mean, it was like that hardcore Midwestern, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and don't say anything no matter how hard it gets or how awful things have been that have happened to you. And what was interesting to me in my life is like, as my grandparents got older and they began to die, who outlived all of them? Great Aunt Mae. Great Aunt Mae was the one who outlived all of them and continued to just this stalwart energy of survival and making sure she was taken care of and feeding herself and taking care of. I don't think she ever had any in-home care at all. I mean, she was just right up to the end, right? And what was very interesting is, as my other grandparents peeled off and Aunt May was like still standing, all of the cousins, and that would be like my parents' generation, the boomers, all of the boomer cousins began to go, Great Aunt May. And there began to be this sense of respect for this woman who they had always kind of like, oh, they didn't have kids, or oh, she is the spinster. Always kind of like non-verbally, like verbally and non-verbally kind of talked down on her, patted her on the head kind of thing. And like as we got into those later years and the grandparents, were dying off and Aunt May was still standing, and I watched my boomer parents and the collective boomer cousins suddenly kind of come around and kind of rally around Aunt May and begin to respect her in a way that she had never been respected before. And, I don't think I'll ever forget like my parents going out of the way to visit Great Aunt May, which was never a top priority, when we had gone back to Indiana before. But now, as my parents got older and their parents were dying, there was this pointed effort to connect with Great Aunt May and visit her and talk with her and see what she needed and buy her quilts, even if we didn't need to. Like, I remember, I purchased a couple of my Great Aunt May's quilts just because, not only because I knew it would help her financially, but I also knew it was part of my heritage, my Midwestern heritage of those handmade quilts. And a lot of those quilts, like, the fabric was from that old shirt factory and the remnants, and you get the whole idea. Eventually, of course, Great Aunt May died. Great Aunt May died, and my parents told me about it. Due to Great Aunt May and all the memories that went with her, and then kind of forgot about her and went on with my life, right? Until this spring, I'm sitting there in meditation, and Great Aunt May floats into my energy space. kind of like, ding, I'm here. And I was so shocked. I was so surprised because out of all the family members that I knew of on the other side, she's like the last one I thought that would show up. But she was like, she was like there. She showed up. And so I could feel that energy exchange go on between us. And what was really interesting in that energy exchange is on the other side, she was like light and airy and happy, because the Aunt Mae that I knew when she was, in Indiana living out her life, I mean, she was just like, her and serious and not much smiling, and it was that whole greatest generation kind of thing, kind of had to be there and rub shoulders with them to know. So when she came in energetically and she's like all light and happy and bing, here I am, it not only caught me off guard that she was there, but her energy kind of caught me off guard too. And it just kind of showed me it's like when we, die from this side and birth over to the other side into the light field, our soul journey continues. And I could tell just in interacting with her, I'm like, oh my God, she's been doing a lot of soul work in the light field since she got to the other side. You could just kind of feel it. So we're having this exchange. I just energetically having this exchange, and all of a sudden I can feel this energy coming off of her. She's saying to me, Dana, you have done so much for the family line. And the way the energy came through and the way she didn't say it, but she said it. It was like an energy. It translated into that. Dana, you have done so much for the family line. It was like I knew that she knew that, she'd been watching me from the other side. She'd been watching me, and the work that I had been doing on myself, for myself, some of the grueling work that has happened over the last 3 years that I will eventually share with all of you. All of that grueling work, it was like her being there saying or energetically translating to me, Dana, you have done so much for the family line. All of a sudden, this thing that I've been going through for the last 3 years where I've been all alone, all isolated, nobody's really known what I've done and gone through. Just the layers and I can't even begin to tell you guys what I've gone through. And to have Aunt Mae, Great Aunt Mae, that stalwart of energy in our lives, come through from the other side and recognize me, acknowledge me, and say, Dana, you have done so much for the family line. You've shifted things and moved things and healed things. You have changed so much for us. You're making so much more possible for all of us in the family line. And then she said, thank you. She thanked me, which was like the last thing I would ever expect to have happen in energy world, was like my great Aunt Mae and all that stuff from her life, and coming through and being able to say, hey, you've changed stuff in the family line for us, and then thank me. Oh my God, that's not stuff greatest generation does. Those of you who are like Gen X and boomer parents, and you know that greatest generation of how hardcore they were. So to have her do this, just by the time we were done with the interaction, I was just sitting there with just tears streaming down my face. Because, greatest generation, a granddaughter doing psychic stuff like I am, that would have not gone over well. By the time I had my awakening, my grandparents were beginning to be in homes and beginning to die. And so that conversation never came up. So this whole thing of a greatest generation, great aunt coming through, saying all of this, it rocked my world in so many different ways. And so just to have that acknowledgement and resonance and connection, that was something else to have on a spring morning. Just the acknowledgement of look what you've done. It's made such a difference. It's making such a difference. And thank you. We are just so grateful for all of this. I'm thinking that the exchange is done. Like, I'm thinking that was a really big give from spirit world. Like, I really appreciated, very grateful. Finished up my meditation. Great Aunt Mae kind of faded away, kind of, faded into the ethers again. And I was back alone again. And I remember that morning just kind of going, whew, drying the tears and kind of shaking it off and going, wow, that was a big one. That was more than I bargained for this morning. Cleaned up and finished up with that, and then, geared up to take Peanut for a walk and start taking care of the kitty cats, that whole thing. And Aunt Mae didn't come back that day, but I began to feel her hanging out with me, right? Like, I'm doing something, I'm like, oh, Great Aunt Mae's here. Cool. Hey, Great Aunt Mae, great to see you. I can feel one of my grandmothers and other grandmothers is like, oh, matriarchal lineage with me, just really nice. So tooling along. And still, Great Aunt Mae's hanging out. She's hanging out. This went on for a couple of weeks, right? This went on for a couple of weeks. And then one day, I'm out walking Peanut like I always am along the canal. And Great Aunt Mae came from here where I could feel her hanging out, and she's like, right here. Like, I can see her face in front of me as I'm walking along. I'm like, oh shit, this is a new one. And my thought at the time was like, hey, Great Aunt Mae, we had our exchange. That was really, really nice. What are you still doing here? I mean, it's nice that you're here. I really appreciate that you're here, but like, what are you still doing? And she's hanging out in front of my face, and she goes, I can help you. And I'm like, oh shit. Greatest generation from the other side wants to help me now. Oh no. Right. Those of you who are Gen X women, you know exactly the oh shit thought that goes through your head when Greatest Generation shows up and goes, I want to help you. You're like, oh, I don't know that I want that kind of help, right? After all that we've gone through to recover from the boomers and the Greatest Generationers, oh my God. Anyway, so she's in front of me going, I can help you. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I don't know that I want that kind of help, right? So, and she doesn't go. She won't go. And so I'm walking along, Peanut's doing her thing. And then she softened it up a little bit. She's like, Dana, I know stuff. I can help you with some things. I can help you with some things that you don't know. And I was like, okay, because like at this point in my journey, I feel like I have excavated the shit out of my family line, right? Those of you Gen X ladies who have been on spiritual path for a while, you know how it's gone. Like, you dig, and you think you're done, and you're like, oh, there's more, and dig. And it goes on for years and years and years. And then kind of like at this point in my life, I've kind of had enough. I'm like, sure, there's always more healing work to do, but whoo, dog, it's like we've covered like the majority of the bases, right? And yet Aunt Mae, she's hanging in front of me. She's like, I want to help you. I can help you. And then she softens up it a little bit. And then when she said that thing about, I know things that you don't know, I was just like, zing. I was like, what? You know things I don't know. Like, Great Aunt Mae, I thought I have excavated the shit out of this whole family line. She's like, I know things you don't know. I'm like, okay. So I let that register a little bit. And then I can kind of feel her go, you want to know? I was like, of course I want to know. So, of course, I give her the green light. And then she starts showing me things. Now, what you all need to know is that there's some pretty ugly stuff in my family line. Both sides of my family line. Yes, on my dad's side, and when I go to say it's not too crazy, yeah, it is kind of crazy. And especially on my mom's side. Like, the stuff on my mom's side, that's the stuff that just about did me in. And it's like, to put it succinctly, it's the line of family incest. So like, I'm a survivor of infantile early childhood incest from my mother. There was stuff that happened in the home she grew up in with my grandfather, her dad. And then you trace it back further, and there was definitely stuff that happened in Great Aunt Mae's home. It was Great Aunt Mae, my grandfather, Harry, Leo, his twin cousin Lee, and their brother Don. So Lee, Leo, Don, and Aunt Mae. So when Aunt Mae said, I can tell you things, I immediately know it's that literal clusterfuck cluster of all the weird shit that happened in that Illinois household. And you got to know this household, like, low education. My grandfather didn't get, I think he got through the 6th grade. Their dad, which had been my great grandfather, we know at this point he was mentally ill, emotionally ill. There was sexual misconduct. There was drinking. There was it was a tough household to grow up in, and they did not have that much money. The photos, one time I saw a photo of my grandfather and his twin and Uncle Don, my great Uncle Don, of them standing there in these brand new overalls. And I think I asked my grandmother about, why did you guys take a photo of them in overalls? And she's like, oh, those were new overalls. And that was a really big deal to get brand new overalls. These are overalls they wore through the entire week. And they would change out into another set of overalls. So it's this is a time in our country's history where, it literally was like you wear a dress and there's another dress hanging on a peg on a wall. When my grandmother Judy ran off and eloped with my grandfather Judy, and then he came back to get her at some point, and I asked grandmother Judy, I was like, oh, what'd you pack up in the suitcase? And she looked at me like I had 3 heads, and she said, what suitcase? There was no money. My sisters gave me some stuff and my mom gave me some stuff, and we bundled it up in a tablecloth and left the house. That's the type of living Greatest Generation came through and how they built this country. And so back to the home that my grandfather and Great Aunt Mae and Uncle Don and Lee grew up in. It's amazing they came through that household alive. It's amazing they were fed. I don't think, let's just say they were definitely living in food insecurity. My grandfather Newbie and his twin, they literally worked themselves out of that house. We would drive back to Illinois sometimes. We'd be driving along. My grandfather would be driving, and he said, the road we're driving on? And me and my brother would be like, yeah, okay. And grandfather would be, I helped build this road. And this would happen over and over and over again. The same thing in Brownsburg, Indiana, where my mom grew up and her family and grandfather and grandmother. We would drive around that town, and we would drive around with grandfather and go, I built that house, and I built that house, and I built that building. And they were workers. They were hardcore workers. They built stuff. And so when Great Aunt Mae came through and said, I know stuff in that house, I was like, whoa. Because I had pieced together from the family lore and all the secrets that had been kept but were coming out since my grandparents had died. I had pieced so much of that together. And what my Great Aunt Mae was able to tell me is things like, I knew about the incest and I had that happen to me. And when your grandmother came along and dated my brother, your grandfather, I didn't say a word. I did not warn her. I did not warn her and tell her what she was getting into. That's a huge piece of information. Can you imagine that? All that awful, really tough stuff going on in that household. And then here's this woman that shows up on the arm of your older brother, your older twin brother. So my grandfather, he was revered in the family because he got out, he got away, he made something of himself. He worked himself out of that household, went off to war, fought in World War II, saw hand-to-hand combat, came back, had a family. My grandfather was revered because he literally was the epitome of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and working yourself out of poverty. That was my grandfather. So to have Great Aunt Mae come through and go, I know stuff you don't know that I can tell you that's going to help with this whole family healing thing. And I know about like these discrepancies that happened and how they impacted me. And I did not tell your grandmother, this young woman who came through on her twin brother's arm. Like they got married really rapidly during the war. Great Aunt Mae never warned her. My grandmother had to find out on her own later on in her marriage, when I am pretty sure my mom and her sister were also incested by my grandfather. These are the secrets that got submerged in the family line. And here is Aunt Mae energetically in the field in front of me, showing me things, telling me things energetically, the pictures. And I think it was her way of going, I didn't tell your grandmother, and I'm so sorry, because I can see now how it affects you today. And we don't want this happening in the family line anymore. We want to heal this. We need to heal this. And her being able to tell me that she had consciously kept a secret that continued to create damage down the family line, this was her way of having some sort of spiritual absolution by her telling me that secret across the generations, across the veil, knowing deep down what that means, like the damage that it caused that's already happened, but the healing that could happen, that could change things down the family line, was really huge. And on that walk that morning, she was able to portray pictures to me and emotions to me and apologies to me and healing to me. And of course, I'm crying again because the incest that I have carried in my body, that I have worked very hard to heal and release, it was not only mine, it came down through the family line. Me doing the work that I needed to do so that I could stay upright and functional and be a contributing member of society. That's been a pretty big deal in my life. I've not talked about it very much or very openly, but the crushing effects of the trauma of my mom and the incest have been some of the darkest things I have dealt with in my entire life. So to have Aunt Mae show up and be an ally and say, I'm sorry that happened to you, and I'm sorry I contributed to it, and here's the things that I know, and she could show me pictures and show me things, and there was an apology, and I could feel forgiveness, and I could feel love, and I could feel some trust come back in the family line. There was all this that happened, and of course, I'm like streaming tears by the end of the walk because of this whole thing. And then at the end of this, I can feel her go, now we, and she means both her and spirit world. She's like, now we can provide a healing for you that you've needed for so long, Dana. And what ended up happening over the next couple of days, it was kind of happened in sleep world and dream world and sometimes in meditation. I literally could feel spirit world and my Aunt Mae literally like morph through me and my light field, my body, and heal a lot of that incest trauma that has been living generation after generation after generation in the family line, that has literally cost me my entire life. Like, it's cost me so much this lifetime. And Aunt Mae and Spirit World coming through the light field, coming through as pure light and doing healing work in my body then over the next couple of days, it was just off the charts, crazy, amazing. It literally was a familial lineage healing through my body that I could never have expected before. It was this sense of like Aunt Mae showing up that first morning going, thank you so much, Dana, for everything that you've done. You've made and are making such a difference in the family line. And then this back end healing of like, because of what you've done for us, we are now able to come through for you and provide this healing for you. You've shifted so much. And so, your work, boots on the ground on planet Earth at this time, we're able to give back to you. And so I'm sharing this testimony today about my Great Aunt Mae, because now in retrospect, after all of this happened, the first meeting and the visitations and, like this whole journey that I've gone through with Great Aunt Mae, on the back end of it, I'm now realizing, she is as much a mentor and a huge figure in my life, just like my grandmother Judy and my grandmother Newbie and Linda Lightfoot, my mentor. Great Aunt Mae is one of my most important and trusted beings in my family line, because now I recognize it is her energy and her imprint of energy that she grounded on the planet, and that DNA is alive in my body. She's the woman. She is the matriarch, the crazy ass, amazing, powerful matriarch who lived for decades on her own in central Illinois, on her own terms, not caring what anybody else thought, doing what she needed to do to make it through, and not only just make it through, but live a life that was full and amazing. And I'm realizing now the place that I'm at in my life, having de-centered men and de-centered a toxic family and made my life with my work, with all of you, front and center, I'm realizing now, I had the blueprint all along from Great Aunt Mae. She anchored that blueprint first, in spite of all the crap in the family and all the awfulness that happened and all the trauma and all of that. In spite of all of it, she stuck her ground. And by her doing that, she made it possible for me now in my lifetime, this lifetime, to be a single woman, living on my own terms in the way that I want to, and do it powerfully and sustainably and well. Great Aunt Mae people, she anchored it in. It was that greatest generation. They did some stuff. And I'm realizing now with this whole entire journey with Great Aunt Mae, she anchored in the blueprint for me so that I can, in some way, shape, or form, she plowed the ground so that I could go ahead and continue and do what I need to do in my walk in this lifetime, right? So, and she's not the only one. There's a lot of others in the family line, but she now stands large for me in a way that I had no idea. And so I bring all of this to you, and I give you this testimony, I give you this telling, because people, familial lineage healing and transformation is happening at a whole new level, in a whole new way that we have never imagined before. Like what Great Aunt Mae and I have done this spring, I've never read about anything like that. I've never really even heard about anything like that. I mean, we all talk about doing familial lineage work and healing the familial lineage coding in our bodies, but nothing like I have had happen this spring with Great Aunt Mae. So I'm sharing this with you to let you know the idea of it and what is possible, because I think we're going to be able to go to whole other levels with this, especially as we move through the summer. And just know deep down that whatever that family thing you're wrestling with, there's people in the family line, living and dead, that are able to come through and help now in a way that maybe they had not been able to help before. So that's what I've got for you for now. Make sure you keep walking forward to meet those miracles along the way, and they are all around us all the time. Mwah. I will see you in the next video.